Sometimes some rooms have wireless. How's that? Much better. Okay, I think we'll get started now that the mic is working. So welcome everyone. As you, I'm sure, have seen all week, we have the note well. Please note the note well. You've agreed to it as a participant in the meeting. Just a reminder to add yourself to the queue if you want to speak at the mic. Just so we let remote participants participate. Announcing your name would be nice as well. I've had a lot of meetings in this room too. So we can do some agenda bashing. Did I get your last slides, Thomas? Or
yes, I said them.
Okay. I will. Okay. I'll make sure I have them in the queue. Any comments about the agenda, additions, deletions? Yeah, Dan's going to cover his. No. I could PowerPoint karaoke. I'm just going to read the slides. Okay. Sounds like we're good with the agenda. Dan, you want to start us off? Maybe it'd be good to quickly talk about it. Rohan did bring up, and we have discussed in the past, modifying the name of this draft to not have two duplicate VCONs in it. I would very much need help on what the process for doing that, or is it just the next draft we submit? Draft IETF VCON core. I think there's some.
Sorry, I mean, the history of why it is what it is, it's just kind of our naming convention is, it's the work group, and then it was VCON core, and so that ended up with double VCON. So I don't know. No, I mean, so yeah, I'm if people think I should take a VCON out, I'm happy to do that. Just next iteration. Is that fine?
Yeah.
I would make it an issue. I think you want to leave it
as it is. But what is the fix? Simply just to submit it?
Sorry, the fix is to ignore the problem and just submit it as with that name. I mean, does it really exercise to anybody that it's got two VCONs in there? We could add a third. I think that was
Rowan brought it up.
Jonathan wanted 3.
I actually don't like having two VCONs in there personally, but
I mean, so the solution is to just resubmit another 00. I mean, you would start at 00 again, and then just mark this current one as abandoned or whatever in the data track.
Okay. Do you mind doing that, Dan?
Yeah. Next iteration, I'll do that.
Okay.
Which
you.
actually we'll talk to at about the end of my presentation.
Try it. I may need to enable it.
I'm Dan Petrie, by the way.
Yes, let me have to find it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So the kind of my high level topics, I'm going to talk about changes. Yeah, here we go. Changes between this and the prior version of the draft. I got a hackathon update and a bunch of open issues that I want to plow through and hopefully close or remove. And then a list of still to do stuff. So I got a whole laundry list of little things, hopefully, to go through today. So what changed? We at the last work group meeting, we agreed to change what was called the appended object to the amended object. Made more sense, and I was cool with that. So I went through, made changes in that in the text and the schema definitions and things like that. The other change that we talked at the last work group meeting, we talked about using the extension mechanism instead of semantic versioning and things like that, and that those changes went into there. And there was one thing that I had called must support relative to extensions. In terms of, when you have an extension that, the application needs to have an understanding of that extension. I had called it must support. Mike Jones had suggested calling it critical. That's seems to be more consistent with what's done in other areas on the similar side of sorts of semantics. Added an example for the amended object with its some explanation. There's added some text we had an interop event in April, and one of the things that came up is someone hadn't put the encoding parameter on the dialog object. And so I was looking to be tolerant in our implementation and found some ways to kind of work around that if it's missing. And so I added some text into the on that. Improved the text description on the purpose of an object group. There was a comment from Rowan, and so I added text in for that. There was an issue marked that is a disposition. Is that a core VCON thing, or is it a contact center extension? And I think we talked about that in Madrid and decided that that's okay to keep that in the core. As that made sense. Closed an issue referencing. So there's an issue I had written up. Do we want to be able to reference things by something other than the index? And I think that's a non-issue. I just close that off and remove that. Added, I've forgotten who gave me this comment, but pointed out that, that we didn't have any text in there, but it definitely is a case where we have dialogues and attachments that are not in chronological order. Just the way VCONs grow, we don't always add things in order that they actually occurred in real time. And so I put some text in there just to point out that you need to look at the start times and for dialogues and attachment as the VCON won't necessarily have them in chronological order. Added text on some more text on the JSON registry templates and things like that. I had a comment on that, I think from Rowan on that. This next list, I'm going to skip over this. I have a slide for each of these, and so I'm going to go through those in a little more detail.
Can I pause you for a sec?
Sure.
I forgot to ask for a note taker. So would love to have a volunteer. We can also use the Ecker tool to do that too.
Did you notice that one of the other sessions just used the transcriber?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It would be lovely to have somebody to volunteer to also just help validate that or. Oh, great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Ed. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. I always go through afterwards anyway and re-listen just in case before I close out the next revision of a draft. So, like I said, I got a slide for each of these that I wanted to talk on in a little more detail. So, I added text, and we had this discussion in Madrid. I think it's really important that we have a distinct definition between what is dialogue and what is an attachment. And so I add some text to the draft that kind of tried to disambiguate these two. And I mean, in summary, I think, a dialogue, something that goes in dialogue is something that someone said or explicitly typed, right? And so it's, there's a single transcribable, set of text for that, what was said. Whereas attachments are describable, so things like photos or, like a faxed, application form and things like that, they're describable, but they're not transcribable. And so I hope that this is a fairly reasonable and distinct definition between the two, because it's really important. Because if we have people putting, dialogue stuff in attachments or attachment stuff in dialogue, and we're not going to have interoperability, and people aren't going to be putting things in the right place. And so I think it's really important that we have this distinction. So I'd love people to review the text that's in the draft and give me comments if they, first if they don't agree with it, that this distinction, or if it needs clarification.
Not having read the text in the new draft, but reading your slide. I mean, I feel like dialogue is transcribable is a little too. There are probably situations like where you have only video with nobody speaking, but are still interesting, which is thus not transcribable per se. But
yeah,
but it would still be dialogue.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So one of the concerns is Ed Guy. One of the concerns that I have about the attachment versus the dialogue is that a lot of the same things you want with the dialogue, the analysis, the participants and the like are there. Specifically, with an attachment can be associated with a dialogue. You can't have analysis in the current model. You can't have analysis associated directly with an attachment. You can go to it through a dialogue and
Right.
attachment, but then you also have to have text recording transfer. That one doesn't fit or incomplete in that same network. Let's call it. So it doesn't. It seems to me. I like the distinction between what an attachment is versus what dialogue. A dialogue is transcribable. That would more be an utterance. A recording is transcribable, right?
Right.
A text is already transcribed.
Yes. Right.
A transfer is that's a kind of event, isn't it?
Yeah, and so there is this, the transfer is really. I mean, it goes in dialogue because it's really showing a relationship between dialogues, right? It's not it is not transcribable in that sense, but it's metadata connecting relationships between other dialogues in the transfer case, right? And so.
Well,
I mean, I don't think that should go in attachments as an example. It's it's information about the dialogues.
I definitely agree. Attachments are special.
Right.
But I don't think they're any more special than text or recordings in terms of the topology of where they need to be put. Now, of course, they can be put in a separate key,
Right.
but I think they have to have the same structure as the dialogues do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think attachment has everything that a dialogue has, and it can refer. In fact, an attachment, generally refers to a dialogue. I mean, I think that, maybe that's optional. It doesn't have to necessarily. I can't remember what I have there in terms of whether a dialogue reference is required for an attachment.
My notes
But
have it as optional, but
okay, yeah,
but you can't have an analysis directly associated with an attachment.
right. And so we talked about that. And so I think the solution for that, Ed and I talked about this earlier today. I think the solution for that is, right now, analysis refers to, one or more dialogues that the analysis was applied to. I think it probably should also, you get by inference or by, you know, a second reference, you get the attachments that were related to that dialogue if you just refer to the dialogue. But if you had a piece of analysis that was only, you know, relevant to an attachment, I think we probably need to have an attachment reference.
Right.
And make that, and in that case, we would, you know, I think those would be mutually exclusive. So, you know, a analysis would refer to either, you know, one or more dialogues or one or more attachments, but not both. I don't think it makes sense to do both. I don't know. I haven't thought that
I
through.
think what we should do is try it out.
Yeah.
Because I think that's complicating the topology.
Yeah.
But, I mean, but let's try it out with some examples offline and
Right.
see where we can see what makes sense in the end.
Yep. Sounds good.
Hi, this is Thomas Howe. So I actually had a different sort of way of dividing it in my head. And the way I divided it in my head was the dialogues were those the artifacts of the conversation, the recordings, the text messages, the things that were actually communicated in general. And the analysis was divided in that it was a reportable idea. So if I was thinking of this maybe as in a personal data privacy idea, which was if I wanted to indicate that here are the activities that would fall under the I wish I knew how my data was processed category in the GDPR, they might go into the analysis side, because that would be a strong indicator to, you know, the world that these are things that fall under this category for some reason. And then the attachments was anything else. And the two things together were context, right? So his identity was who was in it, and the dialogues were the detritus. Then the attachments and analysis were identical, except to say that perhaps the analyses had that additional burden of reporting and governance. That's kind of that was in my head as I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. I mean, in most of the examples where I have been using attachments, you know, attachment was sent by a party in the dialogue, right? And you know, was contributed, as by a party, and so. I mean, I hadn't really thought of situations where you would have some attachment that was not contributed by a party, but by, you know, it seems like you know, if it was
I can
added afterwards, then it is some kind of analysis.
I could give you one, which is the lawful basis extension is an attachment, because it's added generally after the VCON's been originally created, at least in my environments. And it's not created by either party per se.
Okay.
It's created by the data controller of the VCON.
Okay. And that's not analysis?
It wasn't how it was processed.
Okay.
Come back to the mic.
My apologies. Yes, because it doesn't answer the question, the data subject question, how is my data processed? It does answer the question, what have I consented to, or what's the lawful basis by which you might process my data,
Mm-hmm.
but not how it's been processed. And the reason why I was thinking of it that way, it was just as a mass public scale way of saying, those are the kinds of things that belong there. And just if you don't know anything better or anything different, that's the stuff that you've got to probably think about when you're thinking about, you know, transparency and processing of data.
Okay. I have to think more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, I mean, I'm just something I heard, I'm not positive, it's quite accurate, saying that analysis refers to either the dialogue or the attachment, but can't say it's of both.
No, it can. You know, when you know, the analysis, you know, currently, you know, what's in the spec, you can refer one or more dialogues. And then the attachments refer to a dialogue. So you have the linking of for a dialogue, you may have one or more attachments that were
Okay, I'm just,
basically.
but
So it's it's a two
so
two-step link.
the attachments are in the dialogue, and so the analysis is of the dialogue with including the attachments that are in it, effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
so,
So the change that I was discussing with Ed there is maybe you want to be more specific, and so you don't want and say that all these attachments for this dialogue went into this
Yeah.
analysis, this specific one or few
mhm.
attachment objects
Yeah.
went into it were
Yeah.
you considered for this
Yeah, I was
analysis.
just thinking of like modeling, say, this meeting as a VCON, and so you have the slides, which are attachments, and then
Yes.
the transcript and the minutes, which are an analysis, but they
Right.
do reference the slides. So.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else before I move on? So I think we need maybe a little more, so just to close on that, I think we need a little more polish and discussion on a distinction and this concept that Tom brought up of attachments that aren't contributed by a person. That's something I hadn't been thinking, and so I need to go review things and see if what the implications are of that. But so that's my action on it. Session ID. So Mark PH gave us some great feedback and review of this, and his suggestion was currently in the prior draft it was there was just a string object. It was basically the same format as in is the SIP header, and he pointed out that that's sometimes confusing and maybe not always clear, and there are some scenarios where you don't have always a local and a remote and things like that, and for easier interop with H323, Mark had suggested that we make that an object. So that's what I did in the current draft here. So it's a real object. There's a local token and a remote token. You can have a session. You can have a single session ID in a dialogue, or if each party, if you have a specific session ID for each specific party, you've got like a conference bridge or something like that. Each of the parties potentially could have a session ID. So the session ID can be a single session ID for a dialogue, or an array that parallels the parties array. So, I have an example here. We've got a dialogue that's got parties 1, 2, and 3. And then our session ID needs, if there's, specific parties have a specific session ID, the session ID array needs to parallel that of the parties, right? So, and then the question is, what do we do if there's none? Do we put null or do we put an empty object? Anybody have a? So I use both in this example. So the first one is null and the last one is an empty session object. Anybody have a preference or suggestion or opinion on that? I didn't know what the best route to do that. Oh, love some suggestions on that.
Does JSON say anything about that?
Well, Jason, you can have null or either of those are. I mean, that's
They're
legitimate.
equivalent.
Yeah, Jason syntax there. But the question is, what do we want to do in this case? So, all right, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I'll take that to the list and try to get some. So an empty object. All right, let's go with that. Sold. SMTP. So I had noted an issue of, what do we put in the dialogue for parties when you're putting an SMTP message into a dialogue, right? Do we do the to and the CC and the BCC and in the from? Obviously, we do the from. You want to know who it came from, and so I made a call on this. basically, this is what I changed it to. We can discuss that if people don't agree. Is you put them all in, right? They all go in. The from needs to be first. That's the originator is the default. The first party is the originator, and then you put all of them in. And my thought there is, I know that Tom had made a comment on, keeping privacy as a consideration. But I was thinking, like, if I look at my raw, SMTP message in my mail client, it shows me everything, right? And so if I sent it, I get to see the BCCs that I put on it. And my thought is that, whoever's doing the observation of the and collection and construction of the VCON, they're doing it on behalf of of a party. And it's kind of, a policy between, it's kind of out of scope a policy issue between the email sender and their application as to whether they want the BCCs copied into that. And so, I just said as a default, you put them all in. Anybody have an objection with that text?
I think Joe's in the.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
When you said them all, do you mean all of the email headers or all of the ones you have just listed?
Well, the ones that I just listed. In terms of the parties, I was talking about what parties get put into the listed in the dialogue. So the from, the to, the CCC, the CC, and the BCC. You would copy all those parties as the kind of default, unless there was some other policy.
I was just going to say that there might be several other headers that you want to keep in other places, like message ID or some of the signature headers or things like that.
Yeah, so message ID is covered. There's a message ID in the dialogue, and there is, I think there's text with respect to SMTP. I didn't enumerate any other headers. I think have an issue, or that's another issue that I'll get to later on, is like, is there other headers and metadata that we should be copying over? And that's been there since, like, 2 years ago. I haven't had any comments on it. So, if you got some headers from some other application that you see that's not in a VCON, now's your time to speak up, because I'm I'm doing more cutting out than adding in. So yeah, Joe, I'd love send me something on the list or write up an issue on the.
I just wanted. I have not been participating adequately to have spoken up, and I apologize for taking the time.
No worries. Next. Oh yeah. So unknown parties and dialogues. There's some scenarios where you have a VCON where you don't know the parties. You have no metadata or anything about them. And so I was trying to trying to lay out a convention of what do we do in that situation? Because sometimes there are situations where you never know the party. There are situations where, you're constructing a VCON, you don't know the party now, and you may know it later. And so you may come back and update that and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of specify a convention. What do you do with these kinds of parties? Do we use an index of -1? Do we use an empty object? I talked to Rowan about this, and his suggestion was to create a party object with, for instance, like there's a SIP has a unknown address of record. It's unknown at an anonymous.invalid or something like that. I think RFC 50 something or other defines that as a standard way of it. So so we could do something like that. We could, instead of just an empty party object, we could put unknown in the name. We could put there was a 3 ways of doing it. I know I'm dropping the ball on one of them. What I'd like to do is make it simple, so that I don't have to look at, do I have to, is the name unknown? Is the SIP URI unknown? Is the email address unknown? I'd like to do one simple thing if we do put that. But Tom, you had a comment or a
Yeah,
suggestion?
this is Thomas Howe. Yeah, my comment would be, and this is I'm sticking up for the application developers here. I'd like for there to be the element name and something which would evaluate to falsy. The problem with unknown, et cetera, is if I'm writing software to see if that's a false value, I can't test unknown for false. But if I say null, which is the JSON default, then I can test that for false. So as a applications developer, it would be a surprise to me to have nothing be described as something that could be truthy.
So I'm not sure. Are you suggesting that for the party indexes that we don't know that we use a null, or are you suggesting that we create a party object with
Yeah.
null in that?
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is if you're looking to indicate that we do not know the party, if the party is an unknown thing,
Right.
the least surprising way of indicating that to an application developer would have to be a null in that location, because then I could test that for being truthy or falsy. And if it's null, then it's false. I don't have one. If it's anything else, I've got a party.
I don't know. I'm always getting into trouble when I have null or zero in a spot. There's, it's not you have to go an extra step to disambiguate those in some cases.
Which is the other problem, right? I mean, if you did it the other way, or you said unknown, then that would never be falsy.
Well, I'm sorry. I wasn't suggesting. I'm sorry. I don't have it because I didn't have it. I was suggesting that you create a party object, and in that party object, you set either the name to unknown or the SIP URI to unknown at anonymous dot dot invalid, or you set the email address to unknown at right. So I would so there's a third alternative. I'm sorry, I was talking with Roland on this yesterday, and I already submitted my slides. But so the suggestion was to actually for the unknown party, you create an actual party object for them, and you label one of the fields unknown. And then like I said, the name or the SIP URI or the email URI, you could put a special value in, and
It seems like a lot of work to go through for someone I don't know.
right.
You don't know them right now.
Yes.
Right, but here we are speaking over the same
Yes.
device right after each other. Up there, it should say speaker number 2. Actually, it should know who I am and should, because I went through the queue, and it should say Ed Guy said, right? But right now, we'll go with speaker number 2, and then later on, we could refine that to Ed Guy. So I'm more in favor of having an object represent that you can later refine as you go through it. Because then, if you stepped up to the mic right now, you could just pick up the speaker number 1 again.
Yeah, I'm John Lennox. I mean, sort of even more complicatedly than that, the initial VCON might be this whole thing is coming from, audience microphone. And then later something would go on to annotate that this time it was Ed Guy, at this time it was Jonathan Lennox.
Right.
Do we have a way to express that? To break down, like one common speaker into more specific who's actually speaking?
So, recordings you can have a single, for instance, you can have a single channel recording, which is the recording of everything, right? And, you may, label that later on in the transcription as to what those parties are. And so, that would generally be how that would, how you would label, who said what, as opposed to, updating the dialogue in that particular case.
Andrew Nickel, just throwing this out.
Little closer.
Andrew Nickel, just throwing this out as a suggestion. There might be another state for party object, and that's in, say, you've collected data on a user that then requests to be forgotten, and have the data expunged from whatever you've retained it in, databases, VCONs, and so on. So there might be a case to have a party object unknown, but also a party object forgotten,
Yes.
or
Well,
whatever you call that.
that I would call that anonymous. I think there's a model for that, and I would say you could do that basically by updating the party object and replacing whatever metadata you had there with anonymous or something like that. And I think that's a reasonable thing to add text to. I don't think there's any text to that extent, but I think that's a great input on something that probably ought to be talked about. And as I said, I think that's an easier problem to redact, if you will, or anonymize than it is to go the other way around. But
Stefan Hibbink, if you are anonymizing, how will a transcription for multiple parties who all been anonymized be differentiated between the different parties who were part of that conversation or that dialogue?
well, there would be a separate party, in that object
They
for
still
each of
have
them.
a unique ID.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So, I'm not sure I got a resolution out of this one.
I was going to ask, did we set out to solve that problem of, like I've heard, splitting a single microphone into multiple people? Like, is that sort of part of the scope that we want to solve? Because you could probably go very deep on that topic.
I think that's covered already in the transcription
Okay.
and analysis. I think this particular problem, I think this is in scope, and it is I think we need to pick a convention here.
So, Andy Newton. So, just making a suggestion. This is not like a commandment. So, not with my AD hat on. You might want to take a poll using one of the, if I'm correct, these are two different questions that could be asked. Would that be helpful information?
Yeah, and actually, I mean, there's I verbally proposed a third, which was kind of a derivative of one of them, and so
Help your chair write a question, and we can put
Okay.
a poll out.
Man, making me do work.
So I guess the question I would like to know is, how do we refer to these unknown parties? Do we create an empty party object, a party object with an unknown label in it, or use some sort of index of, I guess,
Still learning.
some sort of index, special index value.
I think it has to be a yes, no, or no opinion
Ah.
question. We could do 3 polls.
Yes.
Okay, so do we want an empty object?
I think for the sake of time, you could just put in empty object, yes, no, and then
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that.
My phone. I need to vote. I don't have my vote.
So you also need to keep in mind that this is non-binding,
Right.
so you don't need to vote if you don't want to, because you're the one this is input for you, not.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to. I mean, I'm at the mic. Let's have a hum so I can hum louder.
It's a little. So it's pretty split there.
So, no opinion. Yes. Empty object.
Okay, we'll note that. We'll
All
go
right.
to the next one.
All right.
Okay, what's the next one?
Should we use a index of null? And then the third one will be a party object with a label of unknown. A lot of abstainers here. Not even saying they don't have an opinion.
Okay, we're very split here.
Oh, all right. All right. One more. So the third option is a party object that has a label of some sort that says unknown, whether it's the name or the SIP URI or the email URI, has a special label that's of unknown. Details to be sorted offline.
Hopefully you get that.
Jonathan, you had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I feel I just that the comment somebody made that you might have more than one unknown party, and this is the only one that lets you distinguish them, right?
No, you'd have one for each. I mean, if you know that there are distinct parties, you could create multiple. You can have multiple party objects, and they can all be unknown.
Yeah, but in this case, yes. But in the other cases where you're using null, you can't, right? They wouldn't have any way to distinguish.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I think
Yes.
this is a
Yeah,
strong
so
argument.
the index of null collapses everything into one.
Yeah, and I think this is, much clearer for that case.
Nail in the coffin.
In my field, yeah, and also you could having an object lets you put other information like unknown because requested purging, unknown because anonymous call, unknown
Okay.
because.
Okay. Cool. I like that. We'll move on.
Well, we were all very split. So did we have a conclusion there?
Well, I mean, it seemed like it was split, but I think Jonathan came up with a convincing argument that yeah. I'll propose this on
Yep.
I'll give something. Right now your proposal is up in the air in the cloud, and I'll give something concrete to look at.
I guess I didn't know if we wanted another one to get consensus on that. We'll do it on the list too.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
So I got a similar sort of thing for dialogue objects. And in more concretely, we have a transfer dialogue object, which is basically just metadata pointing at other dialogues that are part of a transfer operation. And there are situations where in a call center, not all, in a transfer, let me back up, give a little background. So in a transfer, in a consultative transfer, you've got three different calls, basically. You've got an original call, you've got a consultative call, and you've got a final target call. There are situations where not all of those legs get recorded, and you don't have metadata for them or whatever. And so, but you may know that there was a consultative transfer that occurred, but maybe you don't have you don't have any metadata or recording for the consultation. And so I need to, well, I don't need to. The distinguishing factor between a consultative and a blind transfer is the fact that you have a consultation dialogue. And so you either need to label this some other way, or we need to put something in for the case of the consultation dialogue, which doesn't exist because we didn't capture any data about it. So we could do the same thing. We create an empty dialogue object, and then refer to that. The consultation was we have no information about that, and so we could put an empty dialogue object, or we could create a new dialogue object type, which is no data, no information captured kind of thing. And so it seems to me that I think I like Jonathan Lennox's statement there on null kind of collapses and loses data. Better to have an empty dialogue object or a special kind of no data dialogue object than to use like a null index and things like that. So I would propose that we do a similar thing for dialogues, if that's okay with folks. Awesome. I will move on. Um, So this is just in terms of stuff that was changed. I added more text and clarification. You can have negative outcomes on a transfer. It still makes sense to, in some cases, to have a transfer type dialogue because to describe the parties and dialogues that were existed and or failed and things. So I added some more text about that. That you don't necessarily have a final transfer dialogue. If for instance, you could do a consultation, and the consultation may decide that you don't want to transfer the call to that party, and so that's kind of you bail out of that transfer and start a new one type of thing. So there's text around this that I added to the latest draft. I added one of the issues when there is that we don't have a way to capture DTMF. This fits very nicely into the party history thing of DTMF down and DTMF up events, and there's a string that you put for the digit. And there's a timestamp when it occurs and things like that. So it captures basically everything that you would normally capture for DTMF events. I guess I have two questions here. Do people think that's that's in scope and that we should keep that in there? And then the second question is, should we generalize that into like key up and key down? DTMF is kind of old school, but there's really no change other than the name and some text. Semantically, it's the same thing, but should I call it, key up and key down instead of DTMF up and DTMF down? Any opinions on that?
Do you anticipate any other keys being pressed?
Well, I thought it was, I don't know if it's useful in an application context where I thought that was more generalizable, but I didn't have a. It just occurred to me while I was writing it up. It's like it could be any key or special button, or you had a kiosk with special function keys or stuff like that. You could use that in that context, but I don't.
How would that be different than a text dialogue, a text type dialogue within the in the series of things?
The DTMF is different in the sense that it's in its event and it has a specific time when it occurs, and there's an up and a down motion to it, right? And so what you get out of that is a duration of how long was the button pressed, which may be useful within the application. That may mean something.
You can't get that from the text object. The right term.
There would be a separate dialogue. This is happening within a dialogue, right? To do a text, you would have to have a separate dialogue or something like that.
Yeah, you're viewing dialogues as longer term than I view them.
Yeah.
And then the other comment is, isn't the transfer really a party event? The change in party event?
Well, it's showing the relationship of a bunch of dialogues. You have several dialogues, and the transfer is really showing the relationship of several dialogues. So you would have 3 different dialogues, one for each of the call legs, different sets of parties.
The transfer can have multiple dialogues in it.
It would. It should. No, a transfer dialogue is really just metadata. There's no recording there. Right. All it is it's describing a relationship between other dialogues within the VCON. So I've got, dialogue 0 is my original call. Dialogue 1 is my consultative call.
By sequence showing the relationship. I was thinking in terms of explicitly showing relationship.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that in my VCON I have a dialogue. I'm going to call it 0, which is my original call. The order of this is it doesn't matter. I'm just giving an index for reference. So I've got I've got my original call was dialogue 0. I've got a consultative call was dialogue 1, and then I've got the actual transferred call, which is dialogue 2. And then I have a fourth dialogue object, which is the transfer, which identifies how those 3 dialogues are related. It says, 0 was the original call, 1 was the consultative call, and 2 was the target call. And it also identifies the parties' roles for that as well, as who was the transferor, who was the transferee, and who was the transfer target, right? So the dialogue, the transfer dialogue object is just metadata showing relationships amongst
So
2 or more other dialogues.
So if you want to take it to the extreme, you could treat a transfer event as a party event. However, if you split the dialogue in half, and you'd really get 3 dialogues, and that makes more sense for the application.
Right.
I'll buy that.
So people won't keep it as DTMF events or key up and key down. Any opinion on there? Can we take a poll? I'd like to. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it forces people to wake up.
What's the question? What would the question be?
DTMF
Oh, yeah.
events or key events.
I'll just say.
Yeah.
Okay. Should.
Ed, you're still in the queue, by the way.
People are waking up.
Yeah.
Any other votes?
Last chance. All right. So I think we got a
4-2.
moderate consensus of yes, change DTMF to key.
Oh, somebody
Oh,
flipped.
somebody changed their mind. Woohoo. All
All
right.
right, I'll close that.
Thank you. Quick hackathon update. We implemented at this past hackathon in the beginning of the week here, we implemented the transfer dialog object in our open source and integrated that into a real contact center solution that we've been working on with NetSapiens, and it did some real kind of recording and capturing of both blind and consultative transfer cases. And that's where we kind of identified this situation that some cases we don't have any information about the consultative dialogue, and so want to put something in there to indicate that there was a consultation, but we don't have any metadata about that. So just wanted to do a quick update on that. Also, if people have suggestions on things for the next hackathon, what I've been doing at the hackathons here at the IETF is I've been trying to implement something that's I feel like it hasn't been tested or hasn't been well thought through or whatever. And so I'm running out of parts of that. I think there are a few things left that I have in my list, but if anybody has suggestions, I would love recommendations on what for the next hackathon, what I should kind of work through and better test. Open issues, got a bunch of him. I'm hoping to cross off a whole lot of these. So there was, we had a note in there, but the party object could have a V card, J card. I haven't heard of anybody using this. I haven't had any comments on this. It probably needs more text if we're going to leave it in. I would like to remove it. Anybody mind if I remove that? Okay. So we have in the party object, we have there is a kind of a placeholder parameter for holding a J card or a V card. And it needs more text or it needs to be removed. And so I would like to remove it if that's okay with folks. I had a comment from Rowan May that, you know, in the draft it says the must support is SHA 512 for VCON when you're signing externally referenced body parts. And Rowan had made a comment that he thought that maybe SHA 384 was more reasonable. I don't have any opinion or kind of knowledge. I just picked 512 because I thought bigger numbers better. But but I you know I really have no expert opinion to whether to say that, you know, we should change it to 384 instead of 512. It doesn't. No, I don't. You know, I'm happy to change it if people think that's what we should do. But I'm bringing it here because I don't know what to do with it. Leave it 512. Okay. I think he may have written up, but an issue. They made more text on the GitHub repo for the ID. If you have that link. And then the question we already talked about DTMF. I'm going to move on. Talked about the don't know the party or dialogue. Talked about session ID. Group object. That's kind of one of the remaining things that, you know, I haven't tested or implemented, or maybe somebody else has. But we have this concept of aggregation of VCONs through this group object array. And so I guess I was looking, you know, we can keep that in there, or we can make that an extension, or, you know, maybe that's my next project for the next hackathon, to kind of implement that and try that out. Anybody implemented group object? So what do people want to do with that? Want to keep it in, or or, you know, we can take it out and somebody can add it as an extension when needed? Or, you know, I mean, if we keep it in, I'll you know, I'll put that on one of the top lists for the next hackathon.
Yeah. Hi, this is Thomas. I know I'm going to use it, but I haven't used it yet.
Okay.
And I feel like the group object could be pretty interesting in terms of what it could do.
Yeah.
So let's not cut it short.
No, I mean, it's useful. I definitely, and I'm not saying we should jettison it.
Maybe it's an extension.
Sorry?
That I'm saying maybe I'm suggesting it might be an extension.
Okay.
That way we can like really spend the time to do it right.
All right. Did okay? Shall we? I'll pull it out and we can make a little draft on when we get there on this. Awesome.
I just want to note, time check, we're hour in. So
yeah, sorry. I know I got a big laundry list. I think I'm
no,
not
I know it's important.
too far, and you know, I'm just trying to get things closed because actually where I'm going with this is I'm trying to get to the point.
Yep.
I'd like to have like an interim, maybe, you know, in January sometime, to go through, and I'll spin the draft before then, have an interim, and my goal is to get this to work last call before the next IETF meeting. And so
Okay.
if you don't mind.
I was going to ask that question because there's a bunch of open issues here. So
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's why, you know, I got this laundry list that I'm hoping to check a bunch of stuff off.
Yep.
So okay, if I run on.
yeah, keep going.
Okay.
Just wanted to
Yeah,
mention.
I can, you know, we can jettison the contact center extension if need be. Sorry, I lost my place. So we just said we're going to remove group object, and it'll be added in extension later. Email, we talked about that. This, I don't know, maybe it's just a stupid idea. You know, a thought occurred to me is like, do we want the content hash even when the body, when you've got a body instead of a URL? So, you know, the content hash is mainly for externally referenced content in the URL. I don't know. Do we want the content hash when it's when we have you know, when the body is included as part of the you know, it's not necessary. I don't know if people want that there. I think that might be useful for just, yeah, then you consider it invalid. It's been modified. Which I guess maybe that's a problem when there's JSON, because JSON isn't always right. I think bad idea. Never mind. It was just a thought that it occurred to me at one point in time. So I'm going to say no on that because that was my stupid idea. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I think there are still some things that I need that, and this is, you know, probably another top thing for me to implement in the next hackathon, or maybe even before then, is there may be some still issues when you have separate recordings for, you know, basically a single call. If you think of it in context, you know, if you record just when someone speaks, or you have a separate, you know, recording file for each speaker and things like that, I think there may be some association things missing there. And I need to explore that more. So it's not something we're going to solve here, but I just pointing out, I think I'm not fully convinced it's fully baked yet, and needs some more exploration. The last one here is cert expiration and long-term storage of VCONs. VCONs, some people have to store these VCONs, you know, for compliance reasons, 5, 10, maybe longer years. And so I kind of felt like we should say something about that, you know, because certificates might expire and things like that. You know, what do we do in that situation? I actually have a slide for that. So, you know, I talked to Ori, and he said, yeah, just make it out of scope. That's not your problem. I felt, I kind of feel like I need to say something about it. You know, currently we have a recommendation that you have either the X5C or the X5U in the JWS, either the signed form of VCON. X5C means that the certificate is inline. It's contained within the JWS object. X5U means it's referenced by URL. So the problem, it would be, you know, like if you have an X5U and you're referencing some certificate, and, you know, 8 years down the road that certificate's not there anymore, and stuff like that, or, you know, or it's long expired and things like that. I talked to several people about this, just trying to, I talked to Ecker, I talked to Mike Jones, I talked to Mike Unsworth, and I talked to Richard Barnes on this, because, you know, because kind of, you know, JWS kind of issue in more general for long-term storage. And Mike Unsworth pointed at a kind of a model that's used for the EIDAS. They have this same kind of thing where you sign PDFs, and the model they use is basically before the you know, your first signature expires, you sign it again, and so you re-encapsulate it. So, you know, for instance, we have a VCON here, and I sign it, or somebody signs it, and it's you know, my JWS1 here in my diagram, and you know, let's say it expires in 3 years, and before 3 years up, I sign it again, and I create JWS2, and, you know, before that one expires, I do it again. And so this is you know, kind of the model that was that seemed the most reasonable to do relative to the people I was talking to. I still, it probably needs a, further review and things like that. But, of these three kind of approaches, I kind of thought this last approach was probably the, it's a little bit of, the brute force approach, but I think it seems reasonable and fairly easily documented, or whatever. But love some input if people had on that.
Andrew Nicol again. I think there's really two issues here. One is the VCON long-term storage and one is cert expiration, right?
Yes.
Because there are all sorts of regulatory rules about storing user data, nothing to do with certifications.
Well, I mean,
And they are complex.
the long-term storage problem is, kind of not really VCON's, in terms of
Okay.
your regulatory, that's really
So
not.
when I read long-term storage, I'm thinking retention.
Well,
yeah.
the issue comes up of the expiration of certs of a VCON in long-term storage, right? That's kind of the context.
Okay.
I'm not solving, what
Right.
regulatory issues or people, that I'm just, how do we keep something that we can say has not been tampered with, right? For long-term storage. It's really the.
So this is for an object that needs to be recertified periodically.
Right.
Right? And kept for as long as your policy says, or whatever that is, you're not solving for that.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So, people okay with me writing up the, and I'm not going to do a lot of detail, but just to write up this concept. And this is, this is not something that we're solving for them, but it's an approach that people can use. People good with that?
I guess just to bring it up, are you revalidating the content, or is it just true that you validated it when you stored it originally and that's good enough?
Well, to use this, you have to go all the way down the chain, right? You validate, you've got to validate JWS3, you got to validate JWS2 and so forth. Right?
No, I understand, but
Right.
what does the re-signing actually mean in terms of any certification of you're rechecking its validity and then re-signing it, or?
And it's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Do you, before you sign it, do you have to validate it first while that certificate is still valid?
Right.
I think that's probably, yeah. So there is probably a procedure that I need to document there.
Okay, so you're not. I was going to say you're not just signing a hash of the thing that was previously signed or something like, because that sounds like a lot like blockchain. So, but if you're saying you have to do other work, then okay.
Yeah. So I think, you have to, you probably, before you re-sign it and extend its shelf life, you need to verify it first, probably. Well, yeah.
Or do you only care that it was valid when you initially stored it, and you're protecting it and making sure nobody's going in and modifying it? I mean, I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
that's basically what we're doing. All right, I need to think that process through and a little more, and there's more to it than this. Thank you. To-dos. Oh, here, hopefully a few more things I can jettison. I had a long time ago, I wrote in there an issue. Do we need RFC 6848 civic addresses? I think this is related to E911 stuff or emergency ECRIT stuff. Is we don't have any kind of use cases or evaluation of ECRIT. I think, all right. I think I'm going to jettison that unless someone objects.
This is the beauty of extensions.
Yes. There, and there was issues written up that I wrote up, probably 2 years ago. Do we need some sort of, you may want to have a GPS location for a party. Do we want to have one that is time-based, and so that when they move, we have an update of their location. Again, I think if everybody's okay with that, it's a future extension. I'll take that out. Another kind of in that same category is time zone for the location of the party, regardless of whether they're, not just, their home time zone, where are they currently time zone. And I haven't heard anybody really call them for that. So again, I think I'd like to jettison that if that's okay with folks I can remove that. And then is kind of like the question that that I was talking about when Joe brought up his issue of other headers. Now's the time to speak up. If there's other headers from other communication platforms that we're not capturing, to kind of do the basic SMS, MMS, email, SIP, voice, video. They're not in there now. Now's the time to speak up because we're getting close to. I'm trying to close this out. So, we added a UUID parameter, and I need to chase somebody down to help me find the right registry where that needs to go. I couldn't find it. I found it for the equivalent for JWS, but I couldn't find it for JWE. But that's something I can do offline.
Good question. Is there a mechanism for X- for extensions or something like that?
Yes. So there's an extension framework for VCON. And there's an approach, and we have a couple examples of those. One we are talking, one or two we're talking about today. Andy?
Yeah, and oh, crap, Andy Newton. Without my AD hat on, well, my AD hat on backwards. How about that? When it comes to extensions, doing things like X dashes tends to get people to throw rocks at your proposals.
Yeah.
So I would avoid that.
Yeah, no, I mean there was I didn't mean that the X dash specifically, but there is an extension.
Yeah, so an extension mechanism is great, and
Yeah.
when you're doing that, think about how whether it's going to like require. I mean, we have a whole IANA thing on how to
Yes.
write IANA
Yes.
registries. So go through there and figure out what you want to do. I'm in another working group going through the details of trying to rewrite that and it's turning into a pain. So I would be very, very deliberate about what you want in that registry, if it's an extensions registry, and how things get in when things get in there, how you make sure people don't conflict with other things that go in there.
Right. So there is it is laid out, and we have two examples that we're kind of working through of that, so we can test that framework on what needs to go in the registry and where. Let's see. Here's the attachment object and the analysis object don't, there's kind of an open issue of do we need a type, and these are hard because in some ways we want to kind of register type names if we're going to do this, but at the same time the number of possible analysis objects are it's monstrous. You could invent 6 in 5 minutes just rattling through ChatGPT or something like that. And so at the number of types for an attachment object is probably smaller, but it still seems like it's a big list of stuff. And so I either need a lot of help with people helping me defining what this list is, or we just make it open season and it's just open text. And so looking for input on what to do on those two. Okay. Oh yes. So I think the consensus from the room was no defined enumeration of types for the attachment object or analysis objects.
Yeah,
But Jonathan's going to.
Yeah, I would say open, but with the thought in the back of our head that if we do figure out that an extension could have an enumerated type that extension defined in the future as a separate field.
How about this? How about we call it purpose and make that open field, and then in the future we'll have a enumeration for type, because we use in dialogue has a finite set of types.
Yeah. I mean, attachment and also type is a bad term because we already have like media type for these, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have it open, but I also have the ability, like a lot of languages do, to have, hi, this is Thomas, sorry. Maybe have an underscore as being reserved. So if it has an underscore in the name, it's a reserved namespace and it's not for general purpose. So underscores mean system and not underscores mean everybody. But I think it's really important to have that because the semantic properties of that VCON I see used all the time. So that is one of the best things I see about the deployment so far is how rich people use that semantic ability of the VCON. So got to keep that.
Okay. Still to do. There are a few to-dos I think that I didn't capture in here. I don't think they're a big deal, but I think I went through most of them. I haven't had a chance to go through Rowan's Mimi extension and just to see if there's anything that maybe that he's got in the Mimi extension for VCON that should go in the core, and or just if there's just this is a test of the extension mechanism and whatever. So I need to do that. Love other people to look at that from that perspective. And then actually in talking with Rowan, came up with I came to the thought that extensions ought to have a compatibility consideration section in the draft to talk about what the issues might be for compatibility and things like that. But Andy.
Yeah. So I just want to. So Joe Hildebrand put into the chat underscore is equals to x dash.
Yeah.
That the triple equals means sort of equals, I guess. The I know that's like from some programming language like Ruby or something. Anyway, he's got a point there.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to do anything where underbar is as a prefix is reserved, you need to have a little more definition than it's just private use. That's all.
Yeah. John, because this is JSON, you can always put new fields in, and an extension can always provide new fields. I think if you want new semantics, put a new field in. I think that rather than try to play games with, encoding something into the value of an existing field.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think that's a better way of doing any of these things.
Yeah. So that was backing up to the prior slide, but the group, I guess, is a non-issue. I don't have to do that. Examples for group because we're going to make that out of scope of this document. I would still love. Is he on? I would still love to see an eCrit use case draft. And like I said, I have a few other, probably minor to-dos that are marked in the draft I didn't go through today, but that was a bulk of them. This is really useful. I'm sorry I ran over, but this really gives me resolution on a lot of stuff that I can close out and remove or tune up. And so I guess I'm come to the point where I'll go back to my proposal. I would love to have a interim, sometime in January or something like that. And before that, a couple of weeks before that, I will try to do a spin of the draft and resolve as much of the stuff that I can, with the goal of, resolving those last few issues in the interim so that we can come to work up last call in March.
Yeah, I think we definitely should have an interim. Just objectively, there does seem like a lot of discussion and open items. So So yeah, I'd love to see that list decrease a lot coming into the next interim if possible.
I
But
think we nailed a whole bunch of these.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know I
That's
went on,
good.
but I think we closed a bunch of issues. So I think
yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Representing Rowan on the list, he did mention the JSON schema.
Oh, yes.
Should we have a quick
Yeah.
discussion on that?
So we've had a few requests for to include a JSON schema. I guess is an appendix or something like that to for the for VCON. Love comments on that. Yes, no, maybe, and or volunteers.
Yeah, I know. Rob's in the queue. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, yes for this, and I would volunteer to help out with that.
Awesome. And
Thank you, Rob.
Was there one more thing I thought?
The name. We covered that.
Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Is the intent to make the JSON? This is Andy. This is the intent to make the JSON schema normative. I guess you're putting an appendix, so it's not.
I would want to put it in the appendix.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, all right. Just to let people know that there are individuals here at this meeting who are trying to get JSON schema to be a stable reference. So, if at some point you think it could be a normative reference, that might be possible.
Would there be anything bad about being a normative reference, or what were you implying by putting in the appendix that it wouldn't be?
Only that the text has precedent over the schema,
which I think is a fine thing to do. I'm not suggesting you depend on JSON schema as a normative reference. I'm just saying if you're hesitant to do that because this JSON schema is not a stable reference, then that may change. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to skip CC?
That's up to you. And you're okay with it? You want to skip or? Okay. It's really a matter of timing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would just I'll make two comments and then I'll sit on it. Just on the CC extension. I want to bring up the slides here, but Jonathan Rosenberg gave me a PR with the use case description, and so that got included. And now the request was for that to go in the appendix. I think he put it into the main section. I don't care one way or the other. The only question that I'd have is he wrote up a whole bunch, which didn't get included in this version. Didn't get he wrote up a bunch of parameter names and kind of definitions. Do people want that to be included as well? And that I would definitely put in the appendix because those are not the names that we use in all cases. Some cases they are, and some they aren't. And I guess I could add I have a table that it kind of maps them to what he called them into what we use them in either the core or the CC extension. But my only kind of question there is, do people want that text from Jonathan's use case that talk about the various context setter parameters and things like that? We could put that in the appendix.
Or could the text be normalized to make sure it matches? Is that what you're saying? That
no, I mean that was a lot of work. I don't want to. Okay. Yeah, because I've already written up what these things are, and I've got a mapping between the two or whatever. But I mean I don't want to re-edit all his stuff because I already have text equivalent for them someplace.
I would include it, and then we can have the discussion when we go through the document.
Okay. All right. I think I'm done.
Do you want to quickly talk about Rowan's?
Oh, yeah, you can pull up Rowan's slides. I'm just going to read the words here. Not a couple of things I know. So this is, we're talking about Rowan's contribution of the MIMI extension to VCON. And it was adopted as a work group item two meetings ago or something like that. So he added IANA registrations using the kind of the precedent that we set in the core. Fixed some inconsistencies in the language and things like that. Now he had this statement, and I need to talk to him. He said all parties in the participant list is now a should, where he said that it was a must in the VCON core. I have to look at it again. I thought it was a should there. So, but it's something for he and I to discuss offline, whatever, and sort out. But room metadata changes are now expressed in the party history, which gives you when stuff changes in an within an existing dialogue, it just adds a party history element into that. That was an existing dialogue framework that already was there. So he added some new types. The expires not present unless it was present in Mimi. Oh yeah, so so in Mimi you can have messages that expire that after a certain period of time or a relative time or whatever, or absolute time, that those messages go away. And so he just added text basically that's not present unless there is an actual timeout on those messages. Updated some references and refactored to use so message IG was something that we put into the core, and it was there was something he had in Mimi, in the Mimi extension, but we also ran into that in a couple other cases, and also I decided to put that in the core a few iterations ago. And so he's just consolidated with that. And one of the justifications for putting in the core was like we need that in SMTP messages and things like that. So we want the message ID so we can, refer back to the original. And it's more, I think naming case adjustments. So. Oh, and I guess there's some changes eminent in Mimi, and if that merges, the PR is accepted, then there'll be some downstream changes here that'll need to happen in the extension. And hinting at once a JSON schema is available, add JSON schema to Mimi relative to the extension. Anybody? How many people have read the Mimi extension? Okay, we need more eyeballs, folks, on
Yes,
especially
please
on the
take a
work
look.
group items. We really need some help here to get some eyes on these. I have to admit, I've not, I've only quickly scanned it, so I'm guilty as well, and I need to go through and read that in detail. So, anything else?
Sounds like no. Okay, Thomas. Thank you, Dan. World transcription format.
No, I think we'll have a basis first.
Oh, shoot. I need to go over to my.
Good note. All right.
Do you mind starting? Or, let me quick.
Home stretch, guys.
I didn't do what I promised. Which one? The latest one?
Yeah, the one that's much better.
Okay. It shows up. There it is. Good.
Great. All right. All set. So my name is Thomas McCarthy Howe, and I'm here to talk about the lawful basis, extension. Hold on. You may remember from last time that we were talking about the consent extension. This is the replacement. We changed the name of it. We've popped up a little bit to have a larger view of what the extension is going to cover. So just to remind us from the VCON working group charter that there are privacy matters that are relevant to what we're doing, but we're not attempting to address those concerns directly as as is the layers above us. That's the job for it. However, we do have to discuss such considerations, and we will not preclude support for conveying important notions such as user consent. And this is what this extension is about. I didn't know this before I started all this stuff, but I'm going to know it by heart pretty soon. We all have data subject rights, and the point behind the work that we're doing here is to work for the end user. And a lot of the spirit of the VCON is in personal data privacy. And so I always try to keep my mind on the data subject rights every time I go into this design to make sure that my head's in the right spot around it. And what we are talking about here is particularly centered on a number of things, but particularly around the right to restrict processing, or the right to have your data corrected and withdrawn. So here is this. By the way, I don't know if you ever got like thrown back to grad school in one symbol. This is if you forget your set theory, lawful basis and consent. Consent is actually part of the set of lawful basis reasons, and by lawful basis, what we mean is why do you actually have the right to have this thing in your hand, right? And we say consent because it's kind of like a shorthand, because we think of it as consumer consent for a lot of our work. But the fact of the matter is, there are other reasons for you to have a VCON, other reasons for you to have this in your hands that aren't consent. So other than consent, there are other reasons like contract. The processing you're about to do is actually under contract that the data subject has entered into, or there's a legal obligation that the company has. If you're familiar with healthcare, or better ones probably stockbrokers, and then they have to record your conversation every time you ask for a stock trade. That is a legal obligation that they have. So that's the reason why they have this recorded. Or maybe there's a vital interest. Maybe there's a reason that we're recording it, which is something around human safety. Public task. So if you are doing a task in the public interest, that is another reason, another lawful basis by which you may have this recording. Think of a sociologist, think of a law enforcement. All these are public tasks. And then finally, legitimate interests. So for instance, I have a company that depends upon delivering good, healthcare service in a home, and I have a legitimate interest in governing the people who deliver that healthcare. So we say lawful basis. The point is that there's more than one reason why you could lawfully have the stuff that's inside of VCON, and it's not just consent. So the point behind the extension is to pair the content and the lawful basis. And this is a slide I use for the non-technical in the room. So basically what it does is it's an attachment that goes onto a VCON that expresses the lawful basis by which I have that you may have this information, and the preferences that they have expressed. Now, we're looking at more granular consent. So a lot of you in your careers may have been thinking about communications consent, like it's okay that you call me or text me or email me. This is actually we're thinking about the next level of granular consent, which is the same vocabulary that's being worked on in the AI preferences group. So I'm giving you my consent to data mine on my data or to train on it. Those are examples. But the consent extension also has things like how long is that consent good for? Do you have any proof that it was given? Is there a ledger? Is there a transparency service that you have to report processing to? And there's finally a terms of service. Now, one of the things I want to just talk about really quickly in that terms of service is, I know that a lot of us, our AI is coming and there's a lot of stuff about regulation, but none of this actually has anything to do with what we're talking about. This is really about data subject and data privacy. This is not something that we have to be predicting the future on for AI governance. It's not the point. The point here is that we have existing data privacy laws, and this allows us to be compliant to them and to help our customers, if you're a businessman, to be compliant to it, and you as a person to know that your stuff's being handled correctly. So it's all about data protection laws. So any of the stuff you may have learned about data processing and data controllers and DPAs, that's the section of the law that actually applies to this. Okay, so the fields in the extension, I'll go over those really quickly. At the top of the body, there's the encoding, start, party, and dialogue. Party and dialogue identify the party and the dialogue to which the consent is being provided. So that allows us to have multi-party consent for the same dialogue and express those sorts of hashed relationships, because one dialogue may have many people in it and many people may or may not give consent or for whatever reason. Same thing with so party and dialogue, that's why they're both there. And then the required body elements, there are three. The first is the lawful basis by which this is done. So this is saying that the lawful basis for the dialogue could be consent, contract, all the 6 different lawful bases. The second is an expiration. So just as a blunt way of saying this is how long this consent is good for, if you're disconnected from any sort of transparency service or ledger, exactly how long is the consent applied for. Then finally, and I'll go into the details here, the purpose grants, the array of purpose grant objects specifying the permissions that were given. I'll dial down that. There's a couple of optional things here, and we have had some updates since the last session. So the first, we have the terms of service, which is an optional body elements, and the idea of a terms of service. It could be a URL or just plain text, which is the same sort of terms of service you would get with any other piece of data you might get. A status interval, which is how often that you're expected to go revalidate that this consent is still available. A content hash, and that came from DKG. Thank you so much for that. That allows us to make sure that we have cryptographically signed this particular consent attachment. That way it can't be changed without detection. So this is a little wrapper inside the consent extension itself. That way you can't copy and paste consent extensions between VCONs. There's a nonce in there. Then we indicate the algorithm for that hash so we know how to recreate it. There's a registry value, and this is what's changed. So last time it was just SCIT. This time it can be other services as well, even though I've only defined just SCIT. So inside the registry is an object which has 2 elements. One is just the type of the transparency service, which you can put as SCIT or whatever other type you'd like to use if you're going to use that. And then the URL of where that endpoint would be. Those 2 together allow you to know which registry is where you're going to be sticking and checking for status and or updates. Then there's a proof mechanisms, an array of proof objects that support that lawful basis. So the verbal indications, contracts, receipts, and then metadata for whatever else is there. Just 2 other things here. The first is the purpose grant object. So it tells you what the purpose. I am giving you my consent to record, transcribe, analyze, AI, train, TDM, text and data mining, whatever those purposes are for your particular use case, whether it's granted or not, the time it was granted, and any other conditions that might go along with that grant. And those purpose grant objects are the things that you find over here in the purpose grants in the required body fields. So that's the subtype of that. And then the proof mechanism object is a way of actually containing the proofs themselves. And this is what I was talking about. So verbal confirmation, signed document, a cryptographic system, or an external system. These are the ways in which you can say this is the proof by which I know that I've gotten this consent, when that proof was created, and any other data required to sustain that proof. And that is the consent extension, or the lawful basis extension. Any questions around that? I love WD, right?
I like the cartoons.
Thank you.
Jonathan Lennox. At least the terminology you're using it seems to mostly be GDPR based.
It is.
How confident are you that this applies to other jurisdictions as well?
Yes, great question. So, so the GDPR is considered the gold standard of personal data privacy worldwide. Even the variants like the CCPA are one step below actually the protections that the GDPR give. And most privacy professionals use that as being the template that they use. So I picked the GDPR nomenclature and target because I thought it was easily communicated and well adopted. So that's why I picked it. And that's why I use those words.
Further on that question, Ed Guy here.
Hi, Ed.
If you're in multiple jurisdictions, you have a subscriber that lives in Massachusetts, that is in Vermont, that's using a company in New York, that's using data servers in Virginia, and maybe let's throw Canada in here too for the fun of it.
Right.
How does that
Right.
can it represent all that?
Yes, actually it can, which is kind of neat. So the parties object allows you to have actually multiple parties from multiple jurisdictions. So you could have you could have a party object from me, the Canadian, versus me, the American, from a dual citizen. And you can have both of those as being represented in the system.
Yeah, this is Daniel Smolin speaking. So I take no issue whatsoever with the sort of GDPR-centric language that's used here. I do agree that amongst most lawyers / privacy engineers, if you believe such a thing exists, they would also agree with that. Where I see potentially an issue here actually relates directly to the sovereignty argument that you just made. So even though I believe it is possible to express the sort of data sovereignty of the subjects that, or parties as you want to refer to them as, in these conversations, the issue here is that there doesn't seem to be a way to capture the sort of norms that may exist in that particular jurisdiction that party exists in for defaults. Correct. And I think that's actually potentially a really persnickety problem that you have here. So if, for example, I, as an data processor in one particular jurisdiction, I know that the norms that I have around what constitutes, for example, legitimate interest is enumerated as, purposes A, B, and C, but that doesn't necessarily mean that exact same definition, maybe it's just A and B in some other jurisdiction.
Absolutely right.
The other issue as well is that this doesn't necessarily capture opt-out, opt-in semantics. And I think that's problematic. So I think your intent, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to pose this as a question, right? Is that you can say that certain rights have been claimed or that consent has been granted for certain purposes. I also noted that you have a Boolean, so you can deny certain purposes for processing and so on.
Correct.
But the problem is that this set of things which you are denying is not enumerable anymore.
Correct.
And
that's absolutely right. You nailed it. And so here's how I resolve that in my head. So this is basically meant for a permissioned system. And a permission system in some way is a closed system, right? Because you are doing it under permission into the system itself, even though it travels across networks. You're still starting with an assumption of a data controller that is looking to provide and prove proper handling of data. So it's the vocabulary of the data controller that begins that process of the definitions of this. And so this isn't designed to allow anyone in any one particular place to be able to assert any of that, because it's just too hard. But I think of it as being a toolbox for those people who really wish to do the right thing and prove it, and to make the tools complete enough yet flexible enough to be able to do that.
So I'll make this real quick, I promise. I don't deny any of the statements that you've made. And I think that that's a good goal. And I think that you've explicitly outscoped the sort of like legal, skullduggery that might exist there. And that's great. But I think that what your semantics of the current instantiation is limited is in terms of expressing in some unarguable way what the sovereignty is of the data controller with which the norms are applied.
That's
so
right.
like you said, you can have multiple parties.
Correct.
Right?
That's right. No, you're
Those
right.
parties can be in multiple jurisdictions, but
Yep.
who wins is actually not, and this is something that can be determined analytically.
Yeah.
It is the sovereignty of the party by which their conversation has been captured, right? And those members have their rights, and it's not the data processor whose sovereignty is the one that matters most.
Correct. That's right. Yes. Thank you. That's great input. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that.
Andy Newton, no hats. I did notice that Daniel has a new participant badge on, so kudos to you for participating.
Yes, welcome. And thank you for coming.
Yay. Yep.
And I hope this is not the last time. So I noticed there's some ISO 8601 data types you have in there sprinkled throughout. So I don't know specifically why it's so there's an RFC 3339, which is about date and times. It's a profile of 8601. You might want to take a look at that and see if that profile is more helpful in the fact that I believe what it does is it takes out some of the things that tend to be ambiguous and catch people in interoperability issues.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So
thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Any other questions? No, thank you. And great set of questions. Thank you. All right. One more. We're done. One more. We're out.
Okay. So you will continue on updating that document? I
Yes.
just want to make sure we're
Yeah, I'll
clear on-
continue to update it.
Yeah. Daniel, yeah.
Sorry, just one quick comment I wanted to interject. So it might help to know why I came seemingly so informed about this particular subject as a new participant.
That would be great.
So I just wanted to add some context. I've been working in privacy a very long time. I also happen to work on a Amazon product, which may be very relevant to this. I do not work at Amazon anymore. But I'm also working on stuff in the IoT ops space, which is directly relevant to the kinds of rights, obligations, and permissions that can be expressed in the model that you have here. Just not related to voice conversations per se, but related to abstract data types that you might want to impose policies on as it transits systems.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that there's much broader implications for the types of constructs that you're formalizing here. And so I thought that, might be worth extending a olive branch or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan, Mike, so somewhat in response to that, I'm wondering to what extent we would want, in the question of like, if you don't say anything, what are the defaults, and which depends very much on the jurisdiction. And I feel like that's not something that should be said in a VCON. I feel like that's something that should be understood by the tool that's processing it, knowing the jurisdictional rules, because I feel like encoding that in every VCON is fraught and might be wrong. Whereas hopefully the processing tools can be audited to say, yes, I know that in Europe this is opt out, but in North America or in the United States this is opt in.
Yeah,
So
but there is a, in addition to the work that Daniel's doing, there's other work in the AI preferences group to make definitions of what means what, right? So yeah, we'll track all of those.
Well,
Okay, great.
it also something that I have been paying attention to a lot, like related to STIR, is telephone numbers have country codes and jurisdictional properties as well. So I don't know if that's relevant input into that too.
Yeah, great. Okay. So last one in. So we had talked about this at the very beginning of the VCON effort, which was we weren't going to work on the protocol in the protocol. That is, we were going to do the VCONs and we weren't going to sit and think about all the sub schemas inside, but we did know we had a few that might make some sense. And we knew that consent made some sense. We also thought that transcriptions might make some sense. And I've already found operationally, it's kind of a pain in the butt. We have a lot of different, transcription providers who differ only in format. And so this is a proposal for an extension to define a common transcription format for VCON to aid in interoperability. And so again, sorry for all my color here.
Oh, sorry, I'll go forward and I'll connect here.
Yeah. Okay. So the transcription standardization problem is the same as all of it. We should know this for IETF people. In this particular extension, I put together 12 different transcribers that, to my understanding, get the vast majority of the market. And what was interesting was they all had the same content, more or less, just in different formats. So that would make this particular thing a lot easier to do. So the world transcription format is VCON compatible extension. And so I had a new type called WTF transcription. Getting the whole semantic thing there. And so it goes into the analysis array. It's backwards compatible to everything else which has happened inside the VCON. And it applies a normalization layer. And it happens at conversion time so that the original outputs can be kept as well. So it's lossless and it has a wide compatibility. And this has been checked against the current stuff of Whisper, DeepGram, Assembly, Google, Amazon, Azure, Rev, Speechmatics, Wave2, Vec2, and Parakeet, which is my favorite these days. And so inside the extension itself, there's only 3 required layers: the metadata itself, which I'll go into in detail, the transcript, which is just a simple transcript of what it was, and then segments. A segment identifies what part of the time-aligned chunk is assigned to which speaker. Not every transcriber gives you segmentation, but this actually does derive down into a default, which is there's only one segmentation and it's the file. So even if the transcriber does not give you segmentation, it still works. Okay, so here's the metadata object. So in it, it has the created at and processed, and who did it and which model they did it with. Optionals for how long it took, or in the sample rate, channels, format, and bit rates. Again, this is a union of all the elements that are in those major providers. The transcript object itself simply has the text as a string, language that the transcription is in, how long it takes, and a confidence number from 0 to 1. I'll go over this in a minute. Not every provider has the exact same confidence scoring. So part of the transcription extension has to identify how you translate between different confidence extensions. The segments array is what I was talking about, saying you have to identify where people are inside that transcript, in the transcription, to have her proper redaction, proper data management. And so this does devolve down into a single segment, which means everything. But you can also have, here is where the person comes in, here's where the person comes out. Here is the text that was during that part. Again, confidence and speaker identifiers, which are independent of parties, right? Because the speaker identification information in the transcription, it could be related to parties, and they normally are, but their decisions of how they relate is also captured. That way, if there's a improper relationship of transcription to parties, it will be surfaced inside the transcription attachment, which could happen for all kinds of validation reasons. All right. So here's some of the optional layers, and again, this is a union of all the other options there. So first is words, word level confidence and precise timing. Alternatives, which is, okay, here's the best one I found, but here's a couple extra. If you're a DeepGram fan, you'll have seen that. There's a place for extensions. So if you're a provider and you have specific extensions like keyword spotting and or diarization, there's a place for that. Then there's enrichments in terms of like if you had come in from other sentiment analysis, there's a place for your enrichments. Then quality, which is another place that needs an actual mechanism by which to, make homogeneous all the different ways that quality is measured. Streaming is not something that I've really fleshed out yet, so it's one of the holes here. But I'm putting it here, saying this should be a streaming thing, but not fleshed yet. Here's the words array definition. So again, start, end, and text. This is really important for selective redaction, for PII and removal, etc. There is a speakers object, which I talked about before, which is independent of the parties object, although there's a relationship between them, and that's the transcription itself on the top layer allows you to do that. And the quality object. This is inside the extension. When you read it, it'll talk about how the relationships go between Speechmatics and DeepGram and Whisper to bring audio quality into a high, medium, low, which is the three standard settings. So it covers background noise, multiple speakers, overlapping speech, silence ratios, and average confidences. Okay, so let's talk about this really quickly. This is the conversion pipeline. There's 5 normalization steps to go from any of those particular providers. You normalize the confidence, then you standardize on the timestamps, then you do a language code mapping because they all don't match. Then there's boundary alignments between segments and words. And then feature preservation. So whatever additional features go into the extensions there. And those 5 normalization steps are the conversion pipeline that's required to take those existing formats into this standard one. So I have a standard reference implementation. You can get it on our GitHub. It supports 6 providers: Whisper, DeepGram, Assembly, Rev, Canary, and Parakeet. There is a link for the conserver that we support that does that stuff. You can even load it just from Node. Just WTF VCON will bring you that tool right to your desk. And that is the scope. There's a couple of open technical questions I think I'd like to get some feedback on. I have been working with a number of the tech teams from these providers in this, so I am getting some good advice here. But for the working group here, confidence score representations is something which is for debate. I have pushed all the enrichments into an opaque box to say, listen, that's enough standardization, guys. Oops, sorry. But was that a good idea? Should we have driven down more in that? I'm not sure. I said I still have to do streaming support. So that's not yet addressed in the spec. Is there something that we have to do with IANA around this, or do we have to be? Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that part. But those are the open technical questions that we're still going to work on, and I think that's it. By the way, I was watching Severance as I was doing this, and I kind of got that style thing going. I don't know. Any questions? No questions?
Can you help me with party versus speaker?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So difference between party versus speaker. So the parties that are in the VCON and the speakers which are in the transcription. The speakers which are in the transcription is the estimation of the person who did the transcription. That's what they think. The person who created the VCON related those, that's what they think. Now, they may make a mistake. And this is a way for us to understand if they made a mistake, where the mistake happened. And so that's why the preservation of parties is important. Sorry, preservation of speakers is important in the transcription object. That way we can, put them together.
Jonathan, or they could be different for good reasons. Like the party is in the VCON is conference room 1, and then the transcription is the individual speakers in the conference room.
Correct. That's right.
Andy New Hats. The provider registry, is that are providers being assigned an ID or something like that? Or need to be assigned an ID, or are they registering a URL or something like that? I
think so. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most the trickiest things for me in this one was I never maybe I could really use some guidance with it. Didn't understand how proprietary vendors and commercial interests were identified and treated. So for instance, in this case, I identify that there are 8 providers of transcriptions, and most of them are commercial and proprietary. And so as I'm creating the spec, do I mention that at all? Do I say which ones are, this is a union of, they could change it? I just don't know.
So
I don't know how to do
my
that.
advice on the IANA part of that, the IANA
Yeah.
registry part of that is IANA registries are for deconflicting values, right?
Yeah.
So if there's no value to deconflict, there's no reason to have the IANA registry. If it's just the name of the provider or something like that and
Yeah,
a
okay.
human readable string, then
Right.
there's
Yeah.
no need to do
Good
that.
rule of thumb. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, what I would add to that to say, if there's any reason why some automated processing would need to know who the original transcriber was, as opposed to some human reviewing it to say,
Oh yeah.
yeah, well, why does the automated processor need to know who the?
QA. Quality assurance.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to say, I mean, yeah, I guess the biggest question here is, I mean, is not deconfliction, but canonicalization. Like if VCON 1 spells OpenAI all lowercase and VCON provider 2 spells OpenAI with capital Open and AI and then some suffix, then the QA system might. No.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there's a IANA registry that says if you're doing OpenAI, spell it this way. I mean, somebody else could register OpenAI something else, but they probably won't.
Right.
We are at time, but Joe and then
Real
Daniel.
quick, this is a place where you could use a URI. A tag colon URI might be particularly good with the date time stamp on it.
Great idea.
This is Daniel. So agree, and also I know we probably want to avoid referencing multiple drafts in the context of this draft, but going back to the previous one, establishing rights and obligations and providing some mechanism to enshrine that association probably is also a good use for those fields.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a TOS field, by the way, that goes along with the extent that can.
So that's helpful when you're trying to talk about the terms of service of the various parties.
Yes.
It doesn't help you so much to talk about legal rights and obligations that might vary depending on who's involved.
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking about things like one party versus multi-party consent rules in the US. You know, like
Sure.
that's just one example, but there's
Great.
many others.
Okay. Thank you. And I appreciate your involvement. Thank you.
Yes, great conversation. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll sync on the list on the timing for interim. Sounds like maybe January, but
yeah,
great.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Thanks for caring about VCONs.
Dan, I had a question about.
We took it out.
Oh, wow.
One of the cases I or need to. Well, we're coming to take everything away anyway, so we pack it up. So here's what. So I haven't tested it. Yeah, but I love it. Yeah.
At some point, I've been vaguely meaning to among the